So today in this video, I wanted to talk about this Sony 11mm lens that is f1.8 aperture, and even though that this one over here is a great lens, I just wanted to talk about the downsides and what this thing is really made for. Now before purchasing this thing with my own money, so this is not a sponsored video, I watched a lot of videos but the content that I was looking for in all those videos was missing. So this review in particular is all about that how this lens over here it is comparing against with something like the Sigma 16mm, the f1.4 aperture one, and how good of a setup it can be with this CVE10, and especially for this indoor shooting, the tech videos, the product review videos that you can make with this lens over here. But yeah, I just want to tell you one thing, this is not a bad lens at all. It just depends on that what is the use case scenario, and I can tell you right away it is not the best lens if you want to do indoor shooting, because even though this is a great lens, the purpose is that when you shoot outdoors and you need to enable the autofocus, you need to have the extra space to compensate for the 40% crop, but you do not need the very same thing if you're shooting indoors, and you can achieve even better results with no active stabilization on the Sigma lens, as it will give you even more bokeh and also a decent wide angle as well, just like what I have in this studio. And again, it might be good for a few people who just like to flaunt their setup just like I'm doing right now in this studio. But what I really want is from this lens I just did not get over here. Okay, so I will talk about all those things in this video, but let me just talk about the build quality of this lens, because even though it is a cheap plastic and it is a very lightweight lens, I just love the way that it feels. But at the end, I can say that the build quality is good and there are no issues at all. And if we compare it with something like the Sigma 16mm lens, I think that one over here is a metal one, but due to its weight, I just do not like to carry that lens anywhere. But okay, let me talk about the other things in this video. Now, I shot with both of these lenses side by side and there was a huge difference. Now I would say straight out one thing over here before even going further down the road. This lens over here, it is a very good lens for the landscape video if you just want to show a wider view of the thing. But if you have something like the Sigma 16mm lens, I think it is one of the best lenses if you're making the TikTok shots or the YouTube shots or something, because yes, the bokeh is just really awesome on that one, and also it just gives you that cropped image that you just want from there. And even if you do not want that, you can just turn off the active stabilization and it will give you a wider view as well, just like what you would get on this one over here. But this one again is a bit more wider. Now the problem with this lens particular over here is that whenever I'm taking any kind of vertical shot like a TikTok shot or maybe a YouTube shot or Instagram reel, it just does not fit my profile at all. I just want a very cropped in thing, and whenever I just use the digital, the clear image zoom on this CVE10, it just takes away the portrait mode from this lens over here, and this is something that I just do not like about this lens over here. I just want it to be in the portrait mode and I just want it to be in f1.8 aperture. That is another thing that I will come later in this video. But yes, I want f1.8 and a shutter speed of like 1/60, and the ISO I do not want it more than 250 or 300. That is the maximum that I would want to go. But whenever I just zoom this thing in using the clear image zoom, you lose the functionality of the portrait mode, and that is where you just feel like that even though that you can really crop in this sensor for that kind of the case scenario, the camera is just not able to do that, and that is why I just prefer the Sigma lens over here. And also you can see it is pretty a very wide view that you can see in this video. It does not give a lot of bokeh, even though that this one over here has got an f1.8 aperture that is a pretty fast one. That means that you will get a good bokeh over here as well, and also it should let in more light. That means a better video. You do not need a lot of light to just adjust everything on your videos. But if you compare it with something like the Sigma 16mm lens that is f1.4 aperture, or versus something like the Sony 15mm f1.4 aperture, I think that those lenses are way much more better if you're shooting the tech product videos. For example, I just do not want that area in this shot over here, and this is something that is not possible. Even I just take this camera a bit more further and yes, I am just very close to this camera right now, and this desk is not very much far away. But there is no way that I can crop that portion over here, and even though that I do, I can just edit that very same thing in some kind of video editing tool, but I may lose some of the quality just because of that. So something that you would just want to know. I think that the best camera lens that you would want to have if you're shooting indoors, something like a tech product video especially, you need to have something that has got a bit more bokeh like f1.4 aperture, just like the Sigma lens, and also the Sony 15mm lens. That is something that is a very expensive one, and I think that the cheapest alternative is really the Sigma 16mm f1.4 aperture. But now I just want to tell you one more thing about this lens over here that just wins me over the Sigma lens, and that is the focus breathing on this thing, because it is just none to existence on this lens over here versus something like the Sigma lens that does have a lot of focus breathing sometimes. I think this is just because of the dual stepper portal that we have got on this Sony lens over here, this 11mm lens, and that is just insane. It just focuses very quickly, and it is something that I would say much more better than what you have on the Sigma lens. And even though that lens is not a very bad one, this is just a child that may just spoil you a lot. I just want now the same kind of focus on my Sigma lens as well, and that is one of the hardest buying decision for me. Do I want a better bokeh, or do I just want a better field of view, or do I want something that is like a faster aperture speed? Or you got the point, right? I think this is a great lens and great for the people who just want to showcase a lot more in their frame. But for the people who are into tech reviews or the tech product reviews, I think that this is not the right lens for them. The right lens is really the Sigma 16mm lens, and that was the main point of this video, that why I just wanted to make this video over here. Now both of these lenses, even the Sigma one and the Sony one, both of them does not have any kind of optical image stabilization, so no OIS sensors on both of them. And also, to be able to just update the firmware on both of these lenses, you really need to connect the lenses with the camera, and you need to make sure that these are on 100% of the battery health, and then is the only way that you can just update the firmware on these lenses over here, versus something like the Voltrax and the other brands that just offer you a USB Type-C connection within the lens itself, that you can directly connect to something like your laptop or your PC or something, and you can just update the firmware on those lenses over there. So yes, there is some kind of downside on these lenses, but yes, one great thing about this lens is there that we can just switch between autofocus to the manual focus with this button, as you can see over here on this lens. So this is another great thing about this one. But yeah, I would just say it is a great lens, and I really want to keep this one, but I have to return this one because I think this is not the perfect lens for me. But before returning this thing over here, I just wanted to make a short video so that you know that what are the differences. And yes, for people who just love to do photography, I think that this is a better lens, even though that this one over here has got a lot of vignetting and also the fish eye effect that can be corrected in the Adobe Photoshop. So that is not a big bummer, but yes, you will get a wider field of view, and this is something that this lens is really paid for. Or also if you're into vlogging, because you know these APS-C cameras, it does crop in like 40% to 45%. I'm not too sure about the exact number, but yes, it does crop in if you enable something like the active stabilization. And yes, I think you just multiply it with 1.5, and that would be the real field of view. And at that point, I would say this is a better lens if you are into something that you want to vlog outside and you do not want to spend extra money on some kind of like a DJI gimbal or something that you would want to use with the very same thing. But yes, I think both of these lenses are the great lenses, and even though that I just love this lens over here, I need to return this, and I just need to work out with my Sigma 16mm, the old tried and tested lens that I have in the studio. But yes, you got the point. This is not for the tech reviews and not for the product reviews. I think you should get something like the Sigma lens, as I just explained in this video. So I think that was all that I wanted to discuss in this video. I still think this Sony lens, the 11mm lens, is a great lens. So yes, if you're into videography or if you're someone who just love to vlog a lot, I think that this lens is much recommended. That was all about this video. My name is Anshul. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.